What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the Cutlass Board Games channel, and welcome back to another patch notes video on the Cutlass game. Now, the last couple of times we've had some bigger updates when we've trying to put together a couple more concepts and introduce some more decks and stuff like that, do a bit more crazy balancing stuff. This one's just a really small one. We just have two changes, and I kind of want to talk about what last change accomplished and what this change is hoping to accomplish. Because last time we changed a bunch of stuff around trying to encourage an old archetype called Small Tableau, where you're playing a lot of events. The focus is on events, and then you have Tile Ascendant, which is the payoff, which will let you take an extra turn and then hopefully win the game within those extra turns. But to get there, you have to banish a lot of the cards out of your own deck, and one of the fast ways to do that is by playing events, because when you play an event, it banishes itself as part of its resolution. So that's going to slowly tick up your banish count. You're trying to get to 20. And so stuff like Rift Sealers is going to play events from your deck, and then we made a change to the Watchtower. And the Watchtower is kind of broken. I recorded a game with Tim, you can have a look at that, where basically I play Watchtower, I play Rift Sealers. Rift Sealers gets King's Edict, which banishes 2 cards from his discard pile, and then Watchtower plays the King's Edict again straight away, banishing 2 cards from his discard pile again, removing all of his Remnants of Scarshank, which is really, really strong. And so that was kind of the thing that I wanted to put a lever on. But the problem is that became the fastest banished deck gameplay. Watchtower became the fastest card to banish cards from your opponent's deck. We have Fell's Seer Maiden, which costs 1, draws you 1 card, banishes 1 card from your opponent's deck. That's 1 card. And you need to get to about 20 to win the game. Maybe a little bit more, maybe about 24, depending on how big their tableau gets. But you don't need to activate 40 banishes. You get kind of close. And so just doing 1 banish per activation, being really consistent, was kind of good. Like it was really good. And if it was 2 cards at a time, then it was broken, right? And then King's Edict goes, well, I'm going to banish 2 cards, and then you get to choose what they are, but then you lose access to me. Like you can only do this a limited number of times per game, which was like was fine. It was just okay. It wasn't broken or anything. It was just good. But then with the Watchtower, and then the Rift Seals plus the Watchtower, and then you don't even need the Rift Seals each time. Any other blue crewmate plus the Watchtower meant that you were banishing 2 cards guaranteed each turn. And so looking at the Spire of Exile, it became obsolete. It just is a thing that even if you had it in your hand, but you had those other pieces instead, you would never play this card. And so I'm like, well, I do want to change the Watchtower to be less oppressive because it is very good. But I also think that in that way, Spire of Exile has proven to be not very good anymore. Now, before it got nerfed to what it says currently, it was banish a card from your opponent's hand at the top of their deck, and they choose a card from their discard pile. And then we changed it to banish the top card of your opponent's deck, choose a card in their discard pile, and banish it. So between Spire of Exile, which is supposed to be like an aggro pirate take card, and the King's Edict, you could keep their discard pile small, so it'd be very hard for them to be able to claim treasures with Cannoneer Slacker. And any other Eternal Greed type cards like Arvige, like Scarshank. And that was kind of the goal. And it just doesn't do that anymore. Just playing and abusing King's Edict replaces the effect where Spire of Exile doesn't accomplish anything. And so now I'm taking a new direction with it. I'm trying something slightly different to enable a more aggressive control archetype where it has the new text. The new text is your opponent banishes 2 cards from their hand unless they banish a crewmate card from their hand instead. And this is a very common wording of stuff in Magic the Gathering. There's a card in Standard right now called Bandit's Talent, where it's discard obviously instead of exile, but they discard 2 cards unless if they discard a non-land card. So most of the time they're going to be discarding 1 card, but if they have only lands in hand, then they discard 2 cards, which I think is fine. And that's kind of the vibe that we're going for here, because getting your opponent down to no cards in hand means that they won't be banishing cards from their deck in any meaningful way, and you're not accelerating towards your win con. But they have no resources in their hand, so that you won't do anything. So there's like a lot of decks where you won't have cards in hand, and the Spire will miss. However, if you're playing against the Control Mirror and they have lots of structures and they don't have any crewmates, then the Spire is going to punish them really hard and it's going to eat lots of cards out of their hand. And that's kind of the thing that we're going for here. It's a much more targeted thing. In the Pirates deck, if you do hit them while they have cards in hand, the things that they want to banish are non-crewmates. So any events that, like Crow's Nest and stuff that will turn on later, maybe if they're playing Tide Skipper or something like that, they're like, I can get rid of this because it doesn't matter. I'm just trying to get to Eternal Greed. And then they're going to have to banish a crewmate instead. Or just pick 2 cards, right? And so I think that also kind of works fine. So I think it's not as powerful as it used to be, but it's accomplishing something different now. For decks that try and get a lot of cards in their hand, this is going to try and punish that. And I think that won't be too crazy, because it's worst case 2 cards, best case 0 cards if you just never have any cards in hand. Like there's a couple of aggro pirate decks that just always go to 0 cards, and they're like, that's fine. On my turn, I'll draw my 3, I'll play my thing. And then the Spiders does nothing, which I think is fine. And so it creates a new space to exist in, because the previous one overlaps. It overlaps with King's Edict, it overlaps with the ability to interact with that, and it was just less good. Now it still fits into the Banished archetype, but it gives you the ability to attack from a new angle. That's kind of the idea. We're trying to create space within the design for people to solve specific problems. Like, because if I don't have a thing, the only other card that removes cards from hand is Carrion Deluge. So if you don't have access to Carrion Deluge for whatever reason, then you now have Spire of Exile. And if you're trying to play a banish your opponent's deck, you could play both King's Edict and Carrion Deluge and Spire of Exile to remove all the cards from your opponent's hand as well as deck. And that is just as much a valid strategy, right? I think that giving the Banished archetype, which I think is probably the stronger control deck right now, giving it more tools to play with, I think is really important, because I think it needs help. Right now, I think Aggro Pirates is possibly the best deck, because there's nothing that can stop them from just ripping a card off the top of their deck and going, bam, this clones me a treasure. Having the Cannoneer Slacker in the Banished pile that they can play pretty much nearly every turn. Because all it has to do is gain 1 treasure when it hits the board, and then that can be sometimes just enough for you to be winning the game 3-4 turns in a row. And the way to stop that is by removing cards out of the discard pile, so they don't have Eternal Greed to turn that on, but then you still have to deal with all the ones they have in play as well. Instead, when they're discarding so heavily, they're running through their resources so quickly, the way to punish that is by just banishing as many cards out of their deck as fast as possible. And that's what the Banished archetype is trying to accomplish. It's trying to race them by removing cards out of their deck rather than race them on treasures, which I think is fine. But it means that we need to find a space where it does act fast enough to be able to solve that problem. So this is the new Spire of Exile change. And then we're going to move over to the Outskirts Watchtower change. This one I think is also interesting. This is kind of a really severe nerf, honestly. So the current text is, if this card was sent orders from a crewmate, choose an event in your Banished pile and activate its effect. This is the thing we've been talking about, where it can activate stuff like King's Edict multiple times, which is really, really strong. But then it also just has a secondary effect from when it is just, played face up, which is reveal the top card of your deck. If it doesn't match a faction in your tableau, put it into your hand. Which means that you could be drawing Void cards or drawing something like Carrion Deluge, or if you had a Red Structures. But Red Structures in a deck that requires blue crewmates to be able to activate cards like this doesn't really work very well. And so Outskirts Watchtower kind of was trying to slot into either the blue crew deck, where you're playing 12 crewmates most of the time, 12 blue crewmates, and the rest is kind of blue structures, and all the blue structures say, if this was sent orders from a crewmate, do an extra thing, and you try and load at the beginning of your tableau with structures and then the end of your tableau with crewmates. And it's like a really good tempo deck, because that's like the first couple of turns was doing a little bit, and then it hits the mid game and it's doing a lot. which is kind of strong, and that was kind of the idea that this would sit in there and it would give it a bit more utility in how things were happening. But it's just too strong. Because what you do is you play one Carrion Deluge, one King's Edict, and then it's like one of every event that deals with the problem. And then every time Watchtower is activated, it's doing a thing. It could just be playing Unexpected Maelstrom and putting a card face down into a tableau so that you could be activating it twice per turn. And like that, it's just kind of busted. It's a bit too consistent. So instead, the change that we're trying, which is a huge nerf, and if it doesn't solve the problem, we might just reconfigure it entirely. Reusing events is just way too powerful because events are supposed to be like a really strong one-time hit thing. And there's some other levers that I can pull to try and adjust this. Like I could make a cost extra and stuff like that. But this is what I'm trying for the minute, and then maybe we'll tinker with it a bit more later after we've had some playtesting. So the new text reads, if this card was sent orders from a crewmate, and there are 3 or more factions present in your banish pile, choose an event in your banish pile and activate its effect. And it has no other thing. So it only does stuff when it's receiving orders, which is fine, but it means that it's, first of all, for the first 3 turns potentially of the game, it's not going to be doing anything. You need to get 3 factions present into your banish pile, which is not that hard. So the 3 events that don't have a timing restriction is Savage Tides, is Carrion Deluge, is King's Edict. And you could also play Skeletal Salvage, but I think Savage Tides is the only void card that doesn't have a gate on it. And so then you try and get those 3 things in there, which is just your Rift Sealers activating 3 times or whatever, and then this turns on. So it means you kind of have a couple turns before they start doubling up on the events, and it gives you like a nice power curve where it catches up. But it also does nothing unless if you're playing a crewmate that turn. Which the other one kind of was like that, but now this is punishing a little bit more. And every time we played it, they reveal the top card to potentially draw something that's not blue. It almost never activated. So getting rid of it, I think, is not really that big of a deal. The color split of the deck that runs it has like 5 non-blue cards. Maybe less. And if you've drawn some already, way less. And you eventually get to 0 pretty quickly. So I think removing it's not a big deal. But this is the first card that does nothing when you play it face up. Ever. It only does something when it's receiving orders. So I'm also curious to see how that goes, because that might be a valve that we can put on other things that are too powerful later, where it's like, I don't do anything by myself, but if I'm activated by somebody else, I start to do relevant things. A while ago, I wanted to design something which only did stuff based on what it was sent orders from. So, and that diluted into this, where it's like blue things receiving orders from blue crewmates. But instead, it could be like, if I receive orders from a structure, do A. If I receive orders from a crewmate, do B, which I thought would be really cool, but it's maybe too much text. But this 3 or more factions present in your banish pile was an existing thing made for what the play lots of events deck was supposed to be, that ended up getting scrapped as a concept because the main engine in the deck got removed because it was just way too powerful. You would only ever have like 3 cards in your tableau, and you're doing like 16 actions a turn, and drawing 100 cards, playing 100 things, adding stuff to your tableau, using events, and just, it was crazy. I wanted to create a deck that played like Storm in Magic the Gathering, where you're playing lots of sorceries that generate, incremental advantage, and just the play pattern didn't fit the game. It didn't really fit the game. Instead, I would rather you set up a bunch of things. Like, you set up a bunch of Outskirts Watchtower, they do nothing, and then you start lighting the matches later on. You're like, okay, here's my Rift Sealers, here's my Rift Sealers. You're filling up your banish pile with a bunch of stuff. That Watchtower start turning on, start being a little bit more oppressive, start doing a little bit more stuff. Then you hit the Taela, then it starts cooking. I think that's kind of the idea, where you can have blue crewmates where Taela is the win condition, which I think works fine. We will actually get to see that in action. I'm going to be building that and trying it out. We'll have a look at it, see how it goes. And then playing against Tim, because in the last time we recorded, we challenged each other. Let's build what we think is the most powerful deck and see how that comes together. That's going to be a few weeks away from here because the actual Cutlass game recordings are like way scheduled in advance compared to patch notes, because I want to keep patch notes current, because people want to start picking up and playing the game. They get to get kind of an idea of the current state of things, which I think is fine. And not many people watch these videos, which is not a big deal. But I still want to make it, because then there's like a record history of how things have changed. It would be cool to go back and like look at the actual development log history. And also people that maybe are diehard fans of the game will go back and look at patch notes and be like, cool, this is what has changed. This is some of the ideas behind the game. This is, the design theory and stuff behind it, which I think, has value in itself. But if you want to check out the Cutlass game, get on the Discord. You can literally download the entire thing as a print and play. You can check it out. It's also playable for free online through Cockatrice. See if Cockatrice is still working. I have no idea. It works for me. I haven't been able to get other people to get it working. But that's it. That's kind of where we're at. I'm excited to get this to the table and see if I can kick Tim's ass with it a little bit. See how it goes. But I don't know, stick around. Maybe check out some of the gameplay videos. They've been really good. I've been having a lot of fun playing this game again because we had a bit of a break. And then, I don't know, see how it goes. Maybe we can get to a place where I'm really happy with the game. So stick around for that.